All right, guys, so I want to come at you real quick today and show you kind of how I deal with the two hardest shots, in my opinion, in saddle hunting. What everybody talks about. Anybody can make the strong side shots. The strong side behind you shot, you pick your bow up. Pretty simple. You just pick your bow up, you turn, you draw, and you shoot. Now, this is specifically geared towards sitters and not leaners. That's how I hunt. As long as I have you got a thick, good tree pad to put your knees on, like I can sit here all day long with no issues. Like, this does not bother me one bit. So, like I said, everybody is real good about making the easy shots, the strong side shots. Here, here, and here. And even, the 12 o'clock shot straight out in front of you. That's a pretty simple shot to make. The hard shot, in my mind, is your weak side shot. That's what everybody talks about, the weak side shot. And then something a lot of people don't talk about too is the weak side shot where they're coming in kind of from behind you at an angle. So they're coming in from behind you, but they're on your weak side, right? So how I deal with that, how I kind of mitigate that, and you're never going to be able to make 100% of the shots. I don't care what anybody tells you. There's always going to be a tree in the way, a limb in the way. Like, there's always some shots you're not going to be able to make in the woods, right? So we're going to call this your 95% of the shots. So if you can make your 6 o'clock, directly behind you, all the way around to 12 o'clock on your strong side, those are all pretty easy shots to make. Where you get into trouble, where a lot of people get into trouble, especially new saddle hunters, is they're not used to being tied in like this. And if you go leaning too far around a tree, like, you can, especially if you got like inner ear problems or anything like that, it's easy to lose your balance and just kind of go flying around the tree, bouncing off the tree. You don't want to do that. So an easy way, I feel like, for somebody like that to make these shots is to be a sitter. So everybody's used to sitting in a tree stand anyway, right? You don't have to stand. It's no weight on your feet. If you get a comfortable saddle, you can sit all day long. So how I make those shots is, we'll start off with the weak side shot behind you, the one where they're coming in from behind you at an angle to your weak side. So most people will tell you the way to make that shot is to stand up, okay, pass your bow between you and the tree, underneath your bridge, right? And then come around and make that shot. The problem with that is it's hard to bend at the waist now because your tether is pinching you to the tree. Okay? That's if you stay in the seated position. If you stand up, if you don't adjust that tether because you've been in a seated position, you've got way too much slack and you're leaning out like this to get the tether to catch you. And it's hard to bend at the waist to make the shots, especially if they're close to you. If they're not, the further out they are, the less you have to bend at the waist to keep your form right. But the closer they are, you're going to have to bend at the waist. So how I deal with that. So I'm in the seated position. My arrow's loaded, ready to go. I'm ready to hunt. A deer comes up on my weak side from behind me. You can see I've got an orange target set up at this big oak tree about 20 yards from me. And then I've got another one directly at 20 that are directly on the weak side. So what I would do is the trick is to keep your weight in your butt, right? When you're seated, that's where your weight's at. Your weight's not in your feet. Your feet are just kind of dangling. They're just there to rest on the platform, but the weight is in your butt. So you want to keep your weight in your saddle, in your butt. That's where all your stability's at, and your knees to the tree. That keeps you from flopping around. When you're in the seated position, you're not moving around as much. You're close, tight to the tree. You're not sitting out like if you're standing, you're not sticking out like a sore thumb way out here off the tree. You're just tied to the tree. You're not really moving. Everything's good. So when that deer comes in, I would literally pick my bow up. This is the only way. This is how I do it. This is just how I know to make the least amount of movement. First off, you're going to want to make sure that deer is not looking your way. If they're looking your way, you're not going to want to move at all. But so you got the room to move, right? The deer's looking the other way. You literally just take your weight off your knees, keeping your weight in your butt. You take your knees off the tree, but keep them close to the tree so you don't go flying around. and you literally just get yourself back up against the tree, and you just use your feet to walk around to make this shot. Now, you're going to run into your tether's kind of close to your arm. That's just something you're going to have to get used to. You can still make the shot. So I would draw my bow and make the shot. Now, like I said, your arm may hit the tether. That's something you kind of got to practice at home. I practice this shot a lot. I practice drawing from this seated position, shooting that particular shot, these two shots the most, just because it is the hardest shot to make, and it's the one shot where your tether may interfere with your arm, right? So we made that shot on the weak side coming up from behind. Now, the next one is just as easy. You still go ahead and clip into your D-loop, and you just kind of walk yourself a little further around the platform. Both of those shots, you're still able to make. Like I said, you have to be conscious of where your arm is so that you're not hitting your tether. Like, you have to practice this at home to get good at drawing without this tether interfering with that shot. But the good thing about it is, so say they're close. Say they're not at 20 yards, they're at 10 yards, and you're high up, right? So I showed you before where the tether will pin you to the tree and you can't really bend at the waist. So your form is going to get out of whack and you're probably going to miss the shot. I've done this before. I've shot right over their back because I didn't bend at the waist like I was supposed to, and it threw my angle off. So setting like this though, here's your fulcrum point, right? This is where you can still make those shots, because all you do is lean and your saddle, your bridge just twists through the carabiner. And it's exactly the same as if you were at full draw, and instead of bending at the waist, you just twist your hips. And you can go down to wherever you need to shoot, and that tether is not interfering with that in any way. It's not pinching you to the tree so you can't make the shot. Another easy way to make this shot a lot of people don't talk about, I'm going to tell you real quick. If you're in a basketball-sized tree, nothing huge, when you get into places where you get into really huge trees, it's harder to make some of these shots. And one thing that helps me as a sitter, I put my tether as high as I can possibly reach on the tree. And the reason for that is because the more space you have between the top of your connection point, whether it's a cinder or a prusik, or in my case, a Swabish hitch, I want as much space as I can get between the top of that connection point and where my tether girth hitches to the tree. Because the more line you have here, the further you can work around the tree. So as a sitter, my knees to the tree, I can come around, all these shots are stupid easy to make. They're super simple, nothing to them, right? But say the deer was out here, it's out in front of you on your weak side. Now, directly on the weak side, I showed you how to make that shot, and the one coming from behind you. If you've got one out in front of you on your weak side, it's going to be harder to get turned around far enough, turning the way I showed you with those two shots. So how I would do that is I would take my foot, because all the weight is still in the butt of your saddle. You just take your foot, put it on your stick, and keeping your knees to the tree, you just walk yourself around the tree, and the tree is pretty much hiding most of your movement. But once you get to here, well, then all you do is draw and shoot. It's simple. I can honestly even make that complete weak side shot. Now, I wouldn't recommend this. This is not something that I would normally do in a hunting situation, just because it's too much movement, in my opinion. Like, hunting's incredibly hard anyway. Like, you got to wait till the deer's not, there's a tree between you and the deer's head where they can't see you, or they're looking the other direction or something. Like, you never want to move with them looking directly in your direction. Anyway, when they're looking directly towards you, you don't want to move, because they're so good at picking up movement. But say the deer's looking the opposite way, and they're on this direct weak side shot, which is supposedly one of the hardest shots to make. You can still, if you've got enough tether up here, if you've got enough space, like I showed you, you can still work around this tree. I'm gonna show you how to make this shot. So I'm off my platform now, because I've got so much tether line to work with. I'm completely on my stick, still keeping my knees to the tree. Easy. Honestly, I've got so much room on this tether the way I set it up, if I needed to. Like I said, this is something that most likely wouldn't happen because you're not going to move all the way from this side of the tree all the way around to shoot back over there. You would just do like I showed you in the first one. But I would take my left foot, kind of put it around the tree, and just work a little further around. I could literally work all the way around this tree shooting shots. All day long. If you hunt like that, there's almost, I'm not going to say there's not a shot you can't make, because like I said, there's always something in the woods. There's always a limb in the way, a tree in the way, whatever it is. But if you set up like this is in my mind, and to me, the most comfortable way to hunt, especially saddle hunt. I can just sit here all day long. It doesn't hurt my butt. There's no real pinch points. It doesn't bother my back in this saddle. But setting your tether up the way that I do and having that much space between there to work around the tree, that's what gives you the freedom to get around that tree. That's what gives you the freedom to make a lot of these weird shots, is having that extra room to move. So that's just how I do it. I hope this helps some of you guys who are struggling to try to figure out the best way to make those weak side shots. And good luck in the woods. It's coming up quick. Thanks. I'll catch you guys in the next one.